Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Nuggets News. Another relatively flat week. We had Ripple, Stellar, and Bitcoin Cash in the green. We're going to go over all the latest news as well as a few trades that were quite profitable again this week in a market that's been generally sideways. Before we do though, November 11th is Remembrance Day in the Commonwealth nations, where we remember those that fought for us and the end of World War One, and that hit pretty close to home this weekend after we had, a good family friend of ours involved, unfortunately, in that Burke Street incident. So, as I said here in this post, helping others, I think that's very, Australian, that we do come to each other's aid. And, these things could have been a lot worse. We do live in a lucky country for the majority of the time. And I guess the message is, as we always encourage on the channel, live each day to the fullest, and you never know when these sort of things can happen. So we wish everyone well that was involved in that, and we don't normally like to cover politics on the channel, but important that we do talk about these things when they come up. So let's get into the crypto news. On this day in history, it was only this time last year where I interviewed Jimmy Song, and we're talking about how this is going to play out the SegWit 2x hard fork when miners couldn't quite agree with the consensus of the users and so on, and they backed out at the last minute. And now we sort of have a similar situation playing out with Bitcoin Cash, which I'm going to talk about in this video. 2013, Peter Schiff. I've got nothing against Peter. He's a big advocate for gold and silver and, taking control of your wealth, freedom, liberty, and so on. But he's always been bashing Bitcoin, and he called it tulip mania and said the bubble was in and we'd popped when we hit $375 back in 2013. I remember watching that interview, so there you go. Speaking of history, I logged into Poloniex for the first time in 4 years, and I had some Aurora coins still in my account. I'd completely forgotten about this, and I just wanted to let you guys know that we've had these altcoin cycles in the past. We had Ripple, NEM, Next, and Aurora coin was labeled as the next big thing. It was going to be the official currency of Iceland. All the citizens were going to get it airdropped, and it was going to take off. And I certainly remember getting a bit of FOMO at the time, and that was another altcoin that went down 99% and just sort of has gone sideways. Now there's a little bit of life being breathed into it in more recent times, but you just have to remember that this cycle will play out again in the future, and now you've been through this a couple of times, you will learn from it. In other news this week, we've been speaking a lot about the housing market. Some of these, stats coming out of Australia now are getting pretty bearish. I think Sydney is having its worst correction since 2008, and from 1990 by other metrics. So that was an absolutely fantastic interview. I loved interviewing Martin North, guys. Please check out that interview in his channel. He does some great work with all the latest data because it's of interest to the majority of you, even around the world, as we see, the over-leveraged and overexposed banks in Australia that pose systemic risks to a lot of others as well. Speaking of housing and banks, we're seeing this nightmare scenario, as it's called in Zero Hedge here. 50 million Chinese apartments are empty. So in Australia, we've got hundreds of thousands of apartments coming online that probably, the demand isn't going to meet that supply. But we have these ghost cities in China, and we have 74% of all household wealth is parked in property. That's a very dangerous situation. Australia's somewhere in the middle here. But look how bad, that correction was in the United States. So we have to be aware of all these things happening around us, how interconnected we are with all the banks, and especially the relationship Australia has with China. And we saw a little bank run in a southwest Chinese city, and obviously there was only a few media outlets that covered this. On social media, this was absolutely squashed at the time in China to avoid that fear. And we know that when there's the slightest bit of fear, banks only have these fractional reserves. So as soon as 5 or 10% of people go to the bank and want to withdraw their money, banks become insolvent very, very quickly. I'm probably preaching to the converted there, but this is just the sort of stuff we have to be aware about, how quickly it can happen. The other thing I want to mention here with this relationship with the emerging markets, the strengthening US dollar, the issues with China, I think we're going to see this play out with China and Russia and the superpowers, where they just get sick of this power the US has. Last year alone, there was 1 million millionaires created in the US. They've got 41% of all millionaires. Now, this happens because they have this ability to print money into thin air and pump their economy up and buy goods off the rest of the world for these people that are doing labor for $1 an hour and so on. And I think the rest of the world is gradually waking up to this system. It's not fair, and they're not going to continue to, leave their citizens behind as the Chinese and Indian middle class really rise. This has to reach equilibrium in terms of labour rates. We already see it in Australia where people are, hiring an architect online because it's 10 times cheaper than paying an architect to do the same work in Sydney. And think of it as a water level where it's going to meet in the middle. And there's no such thing as a free lunch. In the US, I think they're coming to the end of this, great run, basically a free run that they've had by printing this so-called very strong dollar that's not backed by anything. I think a similar theme I wanted to tie this to in the US was the power that they seem to have. They seem to act as the world police, and the SEC have been cracking down on different exchanges and individuals, ICOs and so on, and they find the Ether Delta founder. In the end this was a smack on the wrist, relatively $400,000 for how much money he would have made from operating that. He sold that months ago. I think the US are trying to set a standard. The SEC are trying to put a bit of fear in people, but truly decentralized exchanges can't be stopped. So once it's a protocol that's running like Bitcoin, and we have all these nodes all over the world, there's no one to send a letter to and say you're fined or you're the founder. Particularly these privacy-based projects and more private decentralized exchanges. Atomic swaps are on the horizon, so this is all fantastic stuff. Just this week we saw Bancor announce cross-chain, between Ethereum and EOS. So Bancor is a great decentralized exchange that are really at the forefront of innovation, looking to integrate and work with a lot of these good tokens and projects as we build Web 3.0, a little bit like MetaMask. They want to have features that help you access websites and projects rather than just being a trading exchange. And I have done a detailed tutorial on Bancor if you want to check that out. The next thing I want to talk about was healthcare. So I did an interview. I love Simply Vital Health. I love the concept of reshaping the medical system, being a pharmacist. So I've spoken about this before, that the current systems are horrible. Data gets breached in the healthcare system every 2 days. So I'm not against a sort of universal healthcare system and database. I've covered MediBlock, Medical Chain, Simply Vital Health, Siobhan are going for that genetics database. Now, I don't mind that sort of thing, but what I don't want is it to be centralized and government run. It's going to be hacked. It's going to be targeted. Governments are going to get tempted to sell your data onto third parties, even if they say they're not going to, once they get these big offers from pharmaceutical companies to pay them millions for that data. So I want to be in control. I want to have my private key, the password. I want to have to give permission for people to use or access my personal data. And that's what a lot of these projects are trying to do that are working on this industry, rather than something like MyGov, where apparently now it's an opt-out system rather than opt-in. So you've only got a few days to opt out of that, guys, if you are worried about your healthcare records. And it was a pretty even split here in Australia. I'm interested to see your guys' comments below. What do you think about this? Do you agree with me that we need a new system, but government being in control of it isn't ideal? The next thing I want to talk about in terms of great Australian projects, Horizon State had another announcement this week that they're partnering with Halo platform. They've got a lot of those votes coming up. So they've already signed some small parties, some deals in some smaller countries, but very, very soon, in the next few weeks, we're going to actually have the first vote by the looks of it, where they're going to need to buy tokens, have a lot of transactions. So they're looking at this Halo platform in terms of being able to handle the number of transactions that they want to do using their app for all the voting and so on. So it's great to see these projects that I've been really bullish on, getting that working product polished and finally out being used in the real world. So that's great to see. Haven is another one that's really silencing some of the critics out there. The first decentralized multi-currency stablecoin. So you guys know I'm a big fan of MakerDAO, but I'm also a fan of Haven because it is a decentralized stablecoin with crypto over collateralizing it. It's all on the blockchain. We know that it's fully backed to the tune of 500% over collateralization. So they've launched the NUSD a few months ago, and now they're launching, the euro, yen, Australian dollar, and even gold-backed sort of pairs, Korean won as well there, sorry guys. But this is great to see, this currency movement giving you the power to choose all these different stable coins. I'd very much rather you use these ones than the centralized ones, which can freeze your account and stop you from using your funds with just a click of a button. Blockgrain have rebranded to AgriChain. There's going to be more details about all this coming out this week. Read the announcement if you haven't already, guys. But they've had, a lot of demand from a number of industries now. They've been going around the country and around different countries with this working product, and that they've been showing off. It's been very popular. So keep an eye out for some announcements from them this week. And Augur. So this is one I've been very bullish on. It was the first video I made, I think, about different altcoins was about Augur and saying that I love this prediction market style. And they've sort of just been bobbing along in the background pretty quietly. And now they've got this working product. They had $1 million or $2 million of bets roll in about the US midterm elections this week. And that was rivaling the Betfair, and the biggest platforms in the world did about $3 million. So, we're capturing a percentage of that market cap and competing with these real world products being disrupted in decentralized fashion. Very exciting for me to see this all come together, and Augur are going to continue to update their front end, so it's even easier for you to bet. You can create bets, place bets, see the odds. I just love this platform, guys, and I'll do a tutorial on this shortly. Next thing I want to talk about was BAT. So Coinbase listings, even Bitfinex listings in the past were basically a guaranteed, 50, 100%. It was going to go up in price. And for the first time, we've really seen BAT lose a lot of its value. So it did have a good run when the Coinbase Pro announcement came out, but now people are starting to say, well, we know that means it's going to be on actual Coinbase thereafter, and people are pricing that in. And you've heard me talk about this theme before, where when something happens 2 or 3 times and everyone's starting to talk about it, it already gets priced in. It's not just that easy. Who's on the other side of the screen? If everyone's talking about BAT, they know it's going to be listed, they think it's going to pump, it is already priced in, guys. So I don't think it's a bad thing. BAT's gone up a lot in price this year compared to other coins. It's a strong project. I really like it, but just be aware, don't buy into that FOMO. I've got an idea of what coins I think are going to be next, and I've spoken about that a lot. I'm going to touch on that in just a second as well. Next thing to talk about was celebrity. So William Shatner came out and said, I'm a big fan of Ethereum, defending Vitalik and so on. And one of the things I think we're going to see throughout 2019 is more of this personality endorsement, celebrity endorsements. As soon as we have a few high net wealth money managers or, individuals, entrepreneurs put their name to say, yes, I own Bitcoin, I own Ethereum, I'm bullish, all of a sudden it's that no one really wants to be first and second and be the odd guy out. And then we just create that snowball effect where all of a sudden you're the odd one out if you're not talking about cryptocurrency, particularly once things start to go up in price. Obviously, no one wants to brag about how much money they've lost and how much things have gone down this year, but that all changes very quickly. We saw sort of retail excitement last year, but I think, I'm very excited about the possibilities going forward once we have all this infrastructure in place to onboard the more mature users. In terms of sentiment, guys, I put out this tweet about I have a sort of secret indicator. It just uses things like the number of new accounts open for different exchanges and Australian exchanges, altcoin trading volumes of the top 20 coins and other good projects, the number of, engaged users. I'm in a lot of these different Facebook groups I post to and quite active in, as well as the surveys I do about, who thinks it's going higher, lower, what are your price targets. You can pull a lot of information. And for the first time, we're starting to see that all sort of trend up in sync. Now, we've had spikes in the past in 1 or 2 of these, but not for, all these criteria kind of trending upwards. Now, that doesn't mean they can't turn back down. It doesn't mean that price can't go down while sentiment's, improving. These markets can stay irrational in the short term, but it certainly gives me, a good idea that we're getting to the end of the bear market and that negative sentiment. Maybe we do have that final capitulation for everyone to give up. I've spoken about this a lot, but it's just good to see these sort of metrics trending higher. the big news this week is going to be this Bitcoin Cash hard fork. Now, I've done a video, everything you need to know about this as we approach November 15th, guys. For members this week, I spoke about the way that I see this having played out already. So Bitcoin Cash very quickly went from $400 to $640. And I did a video for my community on Wednesday talking about my game plan and saying that I actually think this is the sort of the dumb money, the noobs kind of rushing in thinking, oh, hard fork, I've heard about these. It means you get free coins. I get 2. I'm going to make money. I'm going to sell that on an exchange. It's going to be great. And I said, I actually think the real play here, guys, is to actually short. I think there's a lot of uncertainty, and these people, these big names throwing, crap at each other on Twitter. Money doesn't go to where there's uncertainty, and since that video on Wednesday, it actually, it's played out perfectly, and Bitcoin Cash is now down $100. So well done, if you took that short. It's great to see fundamentals and technicals aligning. In terms of Bitcoin and the hard forks, we've got a bit of a futures market here on Poloniex. So the ABC, which is the main developers behind this, if you watch that video, they're sort of capturing, it's fluctuated between 80 and 90%. So people are saying that, Craig Wright and Satoshi's Vision Coin overtaking the majority of the Bitcoin community. At the moment, that's, a 10 to 20% chance. So watch these numbers come in. I've got some great trading ideas of where I think this is going to go if they reach a resolution and what's going to happen if they don't. So it's great to have those opportunities to make money when you understand fundamentally what's going on, as well as looking at the charts. But this is going to be the big news story of the week. This is the free market determining what's going to happen when people can't agree on the future direction of a coin. And a lot of the Bitcoin Cash guys are sort of saying, this is good, this is what we want. We want to determine, the community hard forks, this is what they are made for. So putting a positive spin on it. Watch that video if you want my thoughts on how that's all playing out. Now, so far we've been very lucky in coins that I've done fundamental analysis on, 0x, BAT, good coins that I thought were going to get picked up on Coinbase. And I sort of said, I think next up is Zcash, and that has really had a big run, about 25% since I said that for you guys there. So what's it gone to there? 110, up about $30. So Coinbase is going to list those coins that they've sort of spoken about, but they're going to throw in a few surprises here and there. So everyone's expecting Stellar, and maybe they go that way, but I think you've got to look for these trade opportunities, as I spoke about before, where not everyone is pricing it in. If they launch Stellar, that's great for the Stellar community, congratulations, but I think everyone's focusing on their coins now. We want to look for the ones that maybe aren't at the front of the pack, or really good projects that I think are going to get listed on Coinbase in the coming weeks or medium term that not everyone's talking about. As I spoke about before, you have to be aware when this is already getting priced in and the hype is running ahead of itself, and then people sort of sell the news. Other than that, price-wise, guys, we don't really need to look any further than this Bitcoin weekly chart. It just continues to tighten here. We've got some really long-term support coming in now, which is great to see. I'll put that on the log chart for you there, guys. This pattern just has tightened ever since, Charlie Mandan has been speaking about this since we got down to this level and had the bounce, and we're just in this equilibrium pattern where we've got a little bit lower, we haven't closed there, and this just has to break. Now, we kind of got right to this resistance and we broke through, and now we've pulled back, but we're still sitting, well above this 6,005.8, where if we lose these levels, this would be that capitulation down to $5,000. I'd be looking to, trade, possibly buy more altcoins depending on the news and what's pushing the market down at the time. I want to digest that. But I think that is really going to be that once in a lifetime opportunity to buy alts if we get down anywhere near these levels. With a bit of FUD, we'll have to see what that news is at the time. And conversely, a lot of people are saying now we're sort of forming this nice rounded gradual bottom where we don't get that capitulation unless there's some really bad news, and markets just gradually trend higher. There's no real opportunities to buy big pullbacks that traders like, and that to me would be a great scenario where the good projects just trend higher gradually in a controlled fashion. So I'm not going to talk too much about price, guys. We've been over this a number of times. I just want to leave you with a couple of thoughts. So Bitcoin's gone up 1,000% every year or two on average since it came to be. Now, every time all the newcomers into this space think I'm too late, Bitcoin's gone to $100 from $2. It's gone to $1,000. It's gone to $20,000. I'm too late. And they always try to chase the next big thing. And only those that understand what Bitcoin is and why it's a competitor to fiat money. It's not just this blockchain technology that makes it great. There's so many contributing factors, and that's why this cycle continually rewards the educated that understand the fundamentals of Bitcoin. And I think this cycle is going to continue at least 2 or 3 more times, and every time these newcomers are going to say, I'm not buying Bitcoin, I don't own Bitcoin, I'm only going to chase the next big thing. So I think it's very important to have some Bitcoin in your portfolio as well as your favorite projects. Other than that, guys, head over to nuggetsnews.com.au if you want to continue this conversation and join us. So thanks for tuning in. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, share these videos around, and thanks for tuning in, guys. Cheers.